All right, folks, the governor of North Carolina and voting rights groups are suing Republicans over their continued voter suppression. Governor Roy Cooper filed a lawsuit over a measure that eliminates his authority to pick election board members, while voting rights groups filed another lawsuit challenging the law's provisions that discourage young people from voting. Cooper said the board changes, which will take effect January 1st, do not align with the state constitution and state Supreme Court rulings of the 2010s that give the governor control over executive agencies to carry out law. State voters also rejected a 2018 referendum giving lawmakers more say over the election board's composition. The Republican-controlled General Assembly overrode Cooper's vetoes on both bills last week. Republicans say the elections board law will create bipartisan consensus on election administration, but Cooper calls it a power grab by the GOP. And Rebecca, that's the real deal. We're seeing this all around the country, where Republicans pissed off, where they don't control everything. So what they are now doing is they are now changing the laws. We see this happening in North Carolina. With North Carolina, we see this happening in Wisconsin. We see this happening all the places where you have Democratic governors, and then you have Republicans that control the legislature.
Yeah, like back in the spring, there's a GOP attorney, I believe her name is Cleta Mitchell. She announced to a room full of GOP donors, like, hey, our playbook for 2024 is to reduce the number of college students who are voting, narrow down the window of early in-person voting, try to decrease vote by mail, and make it harder for people to get registered to vote. She literally laid out to Republican donors, this is our strategy to win in 2024. And so what we're seeing Cleta Mitchell's advice being taken by Republican lawmakers all across the country.
And the thing here, Joe, I mean, I keep making this point to our people all the time. I mean, guess what happens when we don't vote? Then they get these supermajorities and they can do whatever they want. And so it's one thing voting for the governor's race, but you got to vote for state rep and state senate as well, and state Supreme Court.
Absolutely, you got to vote all the way up and all the way down the line. The Republican tagline seems to be, well, if you don't win elections, take the power away of the person that did. And so ever since Jim Cooper won, Governor Cooper won in North Carolina, they've been trying to strip away powers all day long, and they've constantly done it in many ways. And, in most textbooks, they'll say that the legislative branch passes laws and the executive branch actually carries them out. And so, therefore, here they are in a situation where they're basically trying to take away more of the executive's power in terms of what the executive is actually supposed to do. It's not an argument about an honest debate about ideas anymore. I just think that the other side, the Republicans, the ones that are standing in the front at least, understand that they're outnumbered and or that their ideas are unpopular to a large extent. And so therefore you want to narrow the number of people voting, get rid of as many young voters, get rid of as many voters of color as you possibly can, and take the power away of those that unfortunately slip through and get elected by people when people are concerned enough to go vote. And so this is something that we have to pay attention to and be vigilant about all over the place because it's happening all over the place.
Robert, it's unbelievable what they do. Again, stripping the governor of powers. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, same things, just complaining just the other day. Them doing the exact same thing. They fired 7 of his appointees because their deal is we can.
Absolutely. And look, we're talking about this as if this is a new concept. We've been saying, the civil rights community, this is what Republicans have wanted to do for the last 25 years. And they've been working on this through redistricting in 2010, through redistricting in 2020 to try to take over these state and local races. We talked about the fact that from the time Obama was elected till he left office, Democrats lost something like 1,044 seats nationwide. Democrats have to understand you have to win these state and local seats. One thing that you can say about President Trump is, if you are running for dog catcher and you are on the MAGA agenda, he will bring the entire monster truck rally down to your small town. He'll come down to Dalton, Georgia, bring you on stage, put you knock on doors where you contribute money. We have to start campaigning in these state and local races because these folks don't give a damn about democracy. They care about power, the maintenance of it, and the extension of it. And because of that, the entire conceptualization of a pluralistic Republican democracy is now in question, because we have seen over and over again that if Republicans don't win a race, they will simply change the rules to make sure they win next time. And to Rebecca's point, Vivek Ramaswamy is now explicitly running on a platform of voter suppression. He is saying, I want to amend the Constitution to raise the voting age to 25 years of age. I want to get rid of all early voting and have only day of election paper ballots for all elections. He wants to get rid of the Department of Justice's oversight on all federal elections. They are now saying the quiet part, not just out loud. They are making their campaign strategy. Their new strategy is directly on this conceptualization of mainstreaming voter suppression so they can maintain political power despite not having the same sorts of demographic advantages they've had in the past. And we can either sit here and wait around and then find out once they're done what they're doing, or we can start fighting back right now. There has to be a bigger investment on the ground on state and local races all across the country, red states and blue states alike, because if you look across the South, if you look across the demographics, there's no reason there should be a constitutional majority for Republicans in the Georgia House of Representatives based on the population. Same thing for South Carolina, same thing for Mississippi, same thing for Alabama. And we vote our numbers, we take power. We are not putting the money in and the organizational strength in to bring those elections along. It's not all about just electing a president or United States senators. You have to elect the entire team if you want to build that farm system and get things done. And that's where the focus has to be on for 2024.
Well, and what I keep saying, Rebecca, is, folks, I'm tired of you complaining after the fact. I mean, I don't want to hear complaints when the election is over. I don't want to hear you complaining about, look at the bills that they're passing. All these folks in Florida complaining about Ron DeSantis, how many of them didn't vote in 2018?
Absolutely, because we know in 2018 in Florida, that race was decided by less than 33,000 votes. Less than 33,000 votes, and DeSantis would never become governor of the state of Florida. So here's the thing. You just mentioned, what can we do? Well, this is what we know. November 7th, we have an election in Ohio. There's two ballot issues. One is on the recreational use of marijuana. That's issue number 2. And issue number 1 is about reproductive health. It's about access to fertility treatments as well, and also access to birth control. We know in Pennsylvania, we have a set of elections that's coming up that's dealing with making it's 2 Supreme Court judge races that's on the ballot. In Virginia, the entire assembly, in both the delegate side and the Senate side, is up for election. So there are things to vote for. Or even in Harris County, there's a mayor's race that's coming up, as well as some local elections. So there are things that people can do now. And just like what Robert just said, we have to show up and vote our numbers, because the bottom line, the math is the math. Even with redistricting, even with other forms of gerrymandering, even with culling voters, removing them off of removing them off of the voter rolls. If those of us who are registered to vote actually show up to vote, we actually bring positive change. And that's something that simply no one can take away from us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about something else, y'all, that I find to be quite interesting. And that is, now all of a sudden you've got football players, college players who can make money through name, image, and likeness, which they should. So here's what's interesting. There was a congressional committee today. They were talking about a name, image, and likeness bill, and it came up in the Senate. And here's what's interesting here. So Maria Cantwell, who is the chair of this committee, this is what was said. This is from a USA Today article. But why don't y'all check this out? It said Maria Cantwell said the committee came close to agreement on a bill in the last congressional session that was more narrowly tailored just to NIL, but included elements of proposals from Senators Roger Wicker, Republican Mississippi, who had been the committee's chair, and from Richard Blumenthal, Democrat Connecticut, and Cory Booker, Democrat New Jersey, who have been and remain strong advocates of legislation that would address a range of issues beyond NIL, including athlete health, safety, and welfare. But this is interesting. However, she said the problem was, at that point, a lot of people wanted to jettison the HBCUs from Division I, and we didn't think that was such a good idea. And we weren't for that for a bunch of different reasons, and so the negotiations fell apart over that issue. I find that to be interesting that they wanted to jettison HBCUs from Division I. I wonder, Robert, if that came up because Deion Sanders was at Jackson State and signed the #1 recruit in the country, Travis Hunter.
As the prophet Mos Def once said, you start keeping pace, they start switching up the tempo. And that's what we're seeing, that in this case, now there's been a blueprint put in place, and we're seeing people like Eddie George follow that blueprint and been revolutionized in his own way. We're seeing Hugh Jackson do the same thing at Jackson State. Now that we're seeing that once you take away Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney's ability to basically pay players and pay an NFL team to come to Alabama or to come to Clemson, etc. Now there's an even playing field. A lot of these coaches are getting exposed. And what we know is that once black players start going to black schools and institutions, and you start making Alabama depend on only having Tyler and Tucker and Jimbo play for them, they won't be able to compete anymore. So they are now taking preemptive legislative action to make sure that never happens. These state schools will be out of business in a couple weeks, in a couple months, if black players start going to HBCUs and they know they have to do something to keep these institutions alive, to keep that money rolling in for boosters and keep that money rolling in for the state. Because what we have seen for generations are these coaches show up under the guise of recruiting. They buy mama a truck, they buy dad a couple suits, they put a couple $100,000 in a player's pocket, and then they basically have bought their services at university. Well, now I can make the millions I'm actually owed through NIL, so I don't need to get your little stinky booster money. I can actually support my family based on the work that I do and the work that I put in. That scares the hell out of them. Black economic independence is the scariest thing to the establishment of white America.
The thing that I find to be interesting about all of these folks, Joe, is, well, we got to have some legislation, because what they don't like is you got the fact that you take an Angel Reese. Angel Reese just signed with Reebok, okay? Shaq was named the head of basketball at Reebok, so one of the first people he signed was Angel Reese. And then I saw a story where the Caleb Williams, a quarterback at USC, can make more money through NIL deals next year than he could make. And this is crazy. And I think it is crazy. And that should apply to these fools. Because what they're doing is they're screwing black players. They're pissed. They're now pissed because they're making millions. Caleb Williams can make more money at USC next year than he could as a rookie in the NFL. And so now all of a sudden, this is not right. This is not fair. Now, mind you, Joe, the head of the NCAA was making $2 million. He ain't bounced one ball. He ain't thrown no ball, making $2 million. You now have head coaches making, $9 and $10 million. The head coach at Texas A&M, he ain't won shit. Jimbo Fisher, making $9.5 million. He ain't won nothing. Dabo Swinney at Clemson complaining about name, image, and likeness. But he making almost $10 million. Nick Saban. You got Harbaugh at Michigan. All these cats, they are making crazy amounts of money, but now all of a sudden, we got to regulate this. We got to regulate this. These players, what's going on here? It's called, but here's what I love. I thought Republicans love the free market. Oh, we love the free market till them black ball players start getting paid.
That's right, and everybody loves a winner. And I forget what school it is. If it's Florida, it's one of the schools in the South. They are planning to build a new stadium That is in their financial plan. And so basically, you are relying on kids right now that are somewhere between probably the 6th and the 10th grade to build you $100 million stadium with their talent. And so anything that has the potential to dilute that or to take that in another direction is something that they're going to be against. And of course, Deion has shown them, has shown the way and reminded. And, you know, we've had good black players at HBCUs and for a long time, but good programs that can compete and do the things that they need to do and recruit strong teams, not just one good person or two good people or whatever else. That's a little bit different. And so folks like Saban and Sweeney and Fisher, many of whom just get recycled, in and out of different places in football. Sarkisian, who's a good coach, but still, perspective is in order on all of this. Once NIL happened and folks could have their hustle be what they needed it to be, now they wanted to look at it differently because it has the potential to affect them negatively. So here we are again. We like the free market until it's benefiting folks other than us. We like this particular law or how this particular place is set up or how this particular district is set up until the numbers get so where we're outnumbered and we're going to lose. And so it's all about changing the game. And this is another example of changing the game. It's amazing that it takes someone as amazing as Deion Sanders. It takes these folks that are excellent and that are extraordinary to flip the script because of everything that we're going against and we're fighting against. But hopefully we continue to be aware of what's going on, watching it as it's going on, and making sure that we take our stands. And so that these kids have choices of where to go to school. They don't necessarily have to go to Alabama. If they want to go to Alabama, God bless them. But if they want to go to Jackson State, that's fine too. Except the guys at Alabama don't necessarily like that.
But here's why I think this is so hilarious, Rebecca. So I'm sitting here looking at this story here, and now they're talking about, oh, this is unfair. We got to do something because we just can't have a few conferences getting all the money. Guess what? TV is driving this. It's TV. TV money is driving the power conferences. The Pac-12 blew up because USC and UCLA left the Pac-12 because over a TV deal. Okay, then they were like, we don't want the rest of the Pac-12. Why do they change? Why couldn't they get a real TV deal? Because LA, USC and UCLA are both in Los Angeles. And the rest of them schools, they in know-nothing markets. I'm just being honest, and it's all TV deal. So there are Power 5 conferences. It's not going to be a Power 4. It's probably going to get to the point where you're only going to have 2 conferences, where you're going to have maybe the top 30 teams competing and then making all the money. And so Congress can sit here and do what they want to do, but this is a TV money game, boo. That's all this is. And college football ain't nothing but a minor league NFL.
The college football game changed in the 90s. I remember when Notre Dame had signed, a $100 million contract with NBC to televise all their games. It was a game changer. Like, it really exploded college football because everyone was like, oh, you can do that. And so even now, even if Congress decided they wanted to interfere and kick HBCUs out of Division I, even Division I has changed. I mean, you now have the FBS versus the FCS. For your viewers, the football bowl subdivision, which is the highest level in NCAA, and then the FCS, the football championship subdivision, which is like kind of the number 2, like prior to 2006.
Their old school is Division I, Division II.
But the point, like you said, is about money, right? And bring this back to NIL and with the different student athletes, is that we've seen that social media has been an equalizer. Because before, you wanted to go to one of the power schools because you needed exposure, especially if you wanted to make money, i.e. go to the NFL, go to the NBA, go to some of the other professional leagues. But no longer, you no longer have to go to those power schools in order to get exposure. career, you could go on social media, you could go on your Insta, you could go on your TikTok, and you could actually show clips of you playing. But not only that, you can actually make money now instead of having to risk injury through your college career and risk injury. You can make money now, and there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, where I thought you were going to go with NILs, especially with tying this to 2024 and elections, is that we even saw in the Wisconsin Supreme Court special race in the spring, my organization, as an example, we use micro influencers on campus to push out for students to know, hey, there's an election coming, check your voter registration, make sure you turn out to vote, and these are the issues that are on the ballot that you can use your voice with. We actually have worked with student athletes to use them as micro influencers on their particular campus to make sure we're getting the word out. I thought where you were going, where the Senate was going, was trying to restrict what NILs could be used for.
No, look, I'm gonna tell you right now, what the schools don't like, the smaller schools don't like that the bigger schools are able to offer more money to the players in bigger NIL deals. Well, hell, that was always the case when the boosters were giving money under the table. So that was always the deal. But you know what's interesting, and I'm gonna try to pull it up in 1 second. What we're seeing today was actually what Eddie Robinson actually broke down when he testified before Congress in 1984. He talked about then what was going to happen. And what people don't remember, that there was a Supreme Court ruling where the NCAA could not, and Grant Taft, who was head of the Coaches Football Association, they sued, and that gave, so the NCAA used to control TV contracts. Well, then when they won that lawsuit, then the schools could cut their own deals. That's when the game changed. And so now, and here's the whole deal. When you're watching television, you don't care about some podunk school watching. You want to see the big boys compete. You want to see the Alabamas, the USCs of the world compete, and it's all about eyeballs, about ratings. But here's what Eddie Robinson actually said, testifying before Congress about this very issue.
Revenue from television has been the lifeblood for Division I, IIA leagues like our conference. Naturally, the loss of these revenues will have a devastating effect. It will force curtailment of a number of programs and create funding problems for federal compliance with things like Title IX. We have to deal with declining student enrollment and reduce public funding on college revenues. We will not have an opportunity to get the good public relation that is typical of a regional television game or the national television game. So it stands that we are naturally locked out. In our conference, things like basketball tournament for men and women, golf and baseball playoff, tennis and track championships, all been funded by television revenue, and we face serious setbacks. Indeed, monies received from television since 1977 in our league has enabled the Southwestern Athletic Conference, our conference, to wipe out a deficit of $100,000 operating debt and build a league surplus of over $500,000 and operate at the level of other conferences our side. Television has been our lifeblood. It has been a public relation catalyst, enabling us to showcase our program. It's been a boom for recruiting. You have to understand, we are locked out with seemingly no place to turn. Gentlemen, I hope that the members of this committee will give every consideration to our problem and offer constructive solutions. I feel now that after these years and the great contribution that this organization has made to intercollegiate athletics, that the tail is about to wag the dog. It is television now. It will be recruiting tomorrow. It will be academic standards after that. Then it will be buying athletes next until the whole college athletic structure tumbles down. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to appear before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Robinson. Mr. Ninus?
Sounds like that alpha man was speaking some truth there, and everything that he talked about has literally happened. It's happened, and so we're going to continue to see it happen.